Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is our first episode of Honesty about Anxiety. Uh, why we talk about anxiety, I'm usually talk about happiness. I'm a happiness expert, and I talk about happiness. But I notice that a lot of people who deal with anxiety, they don't even think about happiness.
Mm.
So if you're watching the show, you could be one of them that you're more worried about anxiety and happiness is not even a part of your vocabulary maybe. So we're gonna figure this issue out all together. And today's guest for our first episode is Rosanna Gill. Hi, Rosanna.
Hi.
Hi. And let's get started.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Okay. So my name is Rosanna Gill. I am a trauma conscious breathwork facilitator and hypnotherapist. I am someone who's very passionate about helping people really control their bodies and their nervous system regulation, whether that's in terms of anxiety, whether that's in terms of overwhelm. That's something I've dealt with a lot. And my personal story, I worked in the corporate world for many, many years. Did not realize I was living in a state of hypervigilance where I was just always on eggshells, waiting for the next shoe to drop, next emergency, and really feeling a lot of like the wired but tired feeling. Really feeling like I couldn't relax. I couldn't do things like, people would say like, oh, meditation is so good for you. And I'm like, how do you stop your brain long enough to
Mm-hmm.
meditate? Like my brain never stopped. It just was a
Yeah.
constant reel of thoughts. And the thought of meditating actually made me feel anxious because sitting with my thoughts was so overwhelming at that point, at that phase of my life.
Yes.
No, I love meditating, but it wasn't an overnight process to get to that point where I was comfortable sitting in quiet and sitting alone with my thoughts. So very passionate about the topic and just helping people and meeting them where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Actually, like when I was reading about you, you were saying that how do you even say that? Because I was like
Hypervigilance.
hyper-vigilance. So what is it exactly?
Good question. So essentially, it's when your body is constantly in a state of fight or flight, it's always surveying for the next threat. And some people, it can be environmental. Maybe you are in a very high stress job. Some people, it's societal. I mean, I know that we love being very connected with these things, but the
Mm-hmm.
problem is when you're constantly waiting for the next notification and you're constantly getting that buzz, that ding, it's constantly putting your body, and we do it instinctively, like
Yeah.
that's a state of hypervigilance where you're constantly in that state of, oh. And the problem is when your body is existing in that and not having enough periods, extended periods of rest and digest,
Mm-hmm.
your body is basically constantly overworking because it's in that elevated state. And without having enough times to come down into rest and digest in a place of peace and quiet, then essentially your body is overstressing itself. And the thing that's really tricky about it is you get so accustomed to that it doesn't feel any more stressful than usual until there's a breaking point, and that can be a heart attack, that can be a stroke, that can be an anxiety attack, that can be a panic attack. That is, even though people will say, I don't know why something so small set me off, it really wasn't that thing. That was that saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. It was
Mm-hmm.
all the other things that had been building that you just, I'm okay with it, I'm okay with it, I'm okay with it, and then suddenly your body's like, I can't handle anymore, I can't
Mm-hmm.
do this.
Yeah, because and it's not just like people think it's just mind; it's body and mind both, right? Because the anxiety is not only in your mind; it feels like it's only in your head, but it's
Mhm.
actually in your body as well.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that because that was revolutionary for me to start tying a feeling or emotion that I was having or an experience into the sensations within my body. And at first, people were like, "Oh, that's so woo-woo." And I have clients who are like, "That's kind of weird. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it." I say, "You don't think you will, but as soon as you ask yourself, where am I feeling this in your body or in my body? You will have an answer. You will notice it. And when you take it from being this big thing like, oh, I have anxiety, or I feel stressed, or oh, I feel overwhelmed, and
Mm-hmm.
you make it into and you acknowledge it as a sensation in your body, it also takes the power out of it. It reduces the overwhelm because when you just say I'm overwhelmed, that doesn't make you feel any better, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
make you feel less overwhelmed. If anything, that probably feeds into that feeling. But when you
Mm-hmm.
say I feel a tingling in my stomach, I feel a weight on my chest, and you focus on the feeling as opposed to the emotion, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
you can actually pass that. What a lot of people don't realize is any emotion that we have, anger, sadness, anxiousness, frustration, if you feel into it, it will pass through your body in 90 seconds.
Yes.
90
I've
seconds.
heard I've heard that before as well, and I thought I was like, that is actually such a little amount of time.
Isn't it?
But if you keep it in,
Yeah.
it can be hour, two
Yeah.
hours, day, years.
Yeah.
Some people hold this one moment for years.
And it's really, if you sit with it, and I know it feels uncomfortable because the first time I tried to sit with an emotion, I honestly started to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
My breathing sped up, my face felt warm because I'd never been taught to sit with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Feelings are something you avoid if they are uncomfortable. So you either eat through it, you drink through it, you avoid it, you numb it, but you don't sit with it. So if you've never done that and you didn't grow up in a household where you were allowed to just sit with feelings, then it is going to feel weird at first. But
Mm-hmm.
you can build up your tolerance. And 90 seconds, if you can do anything, if you can scroll on your phone for 90 seconds, which let's be honest, you scroll on it for a lot more than 90
Mm-hmm.
seconds, you can sit with your feelings for 90 seconds. And if you have to, put a timer on so that you know at 90 seconds, okay, I can do something else. But you will be surprised at the end of that 90 seconds how much that feeling and that sensation has dissipated.
Mm-hmm. And I started actually teaching people as well, like crying.
Yes.
Crying is such a good thing. If you're crying for sadness or like happiness as well. I love happiness crying, but sadness crying. So now I'm not, if somebody starts crying, I'm not trying to stop them at
Mm-mm.
all. No stopping. So if you try to stop your crying, you're holding it in. Crying is your way, your body's way to get it out.
Yeah.
And you feel like everybody can probably relate how good it feels after you cry.
Oh,
So the after the crying is there's a reason why your body is crying. It wants to let it out, and after the crying feels so good.
it does. And it's tough because I'm so big. I was referred to as a crybaby a lot because I cried all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
people say, "Why are you crying?" I don't know. That's just, and I didn't obviously as a child, you don't know that that is a very perfectly normal physical reaction. It is
Mm-hmm.
nothing more than that. There's no shame that should be tied to it. But I grew up and no fault of my family, but they were also raised with a belief like crying
Yes.
is weakness. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in certain households, I've had friends that said this. And, if they cried, their parent would say, "If you cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about." Well, now you're holding it in because
Yeah.
you're terrified. You don't want to get in trouble. Whereas if we just let them cry, it's actually so much better for you, for your body, for your mental
Mm-hmm.
health. Now I cry I mean, if I see something sweet or beautiful, like I saw this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful moment between this man and his grandchild, I was crying. Ah, it's so gorgeous. But it's like that's good. I'm not going to
Yeah.
stop anymore. And I love that you do that with your clients because I mean, just allowing them to have that space and that
Mm-hmm.
freedom is huge.
Yeah. And like that's the thing, like you were saying, like sitting with the feeling, same way, like having that space where somebody's just there and not trying to make you feel any different.
Oh,
That's like, and that's why I teach as well. Like, just you don't need to give solutions all the time. You just need to give the space, hold the space for the person to be free to feel it.
absolutely. Yes. Yes. I had, so one of the things when I do guided breathwork sessions, people
Right.
sometimes get freaked out. They're like, "Oh," because I tell them, "Listen, it's going to bring up a lot of emotion. You might cry, you might want to scream," and people, "Oh," and I said, "Listen, you need to do that." And the ones who are usually the most resistant to it, it takes them a little while to feel comfortable. But when they truly feel safe and they know they're in a place where there's no judgment, there's no like, I'm not gonna hold it against them. The things that come up, I mean, this is years of emotion that people are finally allowing themselves to release. And the irony is they always go into it so like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna want to do that. And afterwards, like, oh, I feel so much lighter. Like, yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
you just needed to let it go. You just needed to. And when you can create spaces and time in your, I know it may sound weird, but you schedule time to process those emotions, to allow your body to release what it needs to, you're going to notice you're so much more self-aware. You're so much more in connection and in tune with your body. And to what you do, you're allowed, you can really feel happiness so much more.
Exactly. Because happiness is also one of those feelings you have to let yourself feel, and you have to know how to feel it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what it feels like, then how are you going to make it happen? You
Mm,
don't recognize when it happens to you, and you can't create it if you don't know what it feels.
yes. I
So
wonder how many people have you worked with that have never even really like they're not even familiar with how happiness feels.
yeah, a lot of them, and that is the problem because they don't know what it feels like. They don't notice on a daily basis. They notice on a daily basis what has gone wrong, but
Hmm.
not what has gone right.
Yes.
So, and that's the thing. Like they like, and point out, and that's the starting point. Point out what went good in today, what felt good,
Yes.
and then they start noticing what feels good. First, they start noticing what feels good, and then they start noticing that feeling.
Hmm.
Next time, like same way with the negative feelings, you sit with the positive feelings, and you just let yourself. But most people who just have like coffee or tea they like to drink. I don't drink coffee, I drink tea occasionally, but even like whatever flavored water or juice or something like this, where you just sit there, relax, and enjoy that little moment.
Yeah.
That's sitting with a positive feeling. And you just let yourself fully enjoy it.
Hmm. Can I tell you though, I was thinking about this the other day. I texted a friend about it. It's amazing to me how uncomfortable I was for so long feeling any positive feelings like happiness or pride or joy. Like even if something really great
Mhm,
at work would happen, I would have to immediately, well, I didn't do this right. I didn't like, I couldn't, it was so foreign to me to just sit in the good feelings.
mhm,
And I would now I would celebrate. I would, oh, I want to go have a drink or I want to go I want to go eat something. But
mhm.
that's still not sitting with the feeling. And it took me a lot longer than I'd like to admit to realize like, oh, I'm bypassing my own joy because I
Mhm.
just don't know how to be with it.
Yeah, and so many, actually, you're not alone. There's so many people exactly with the same thing. They don't know how it feels, and not that they don't know what you feels. Now you were pointing it out. They're not comfortable with that feeling because feeling good is almost the same way. If you feel extra, extra good, it feels almost like anxiety.
It does.
It's just like such a big feeling, and you're just like overwhelmed with this good feeling, and you're trying to see what is going on. I was grown up with thinking, with this, we had this saying that if something is good, then something bad might happen.
Yes, same. Very
Yeah.
yes. So
So
then
that
it's
was always like fear. I don't know why, but that gives you a fear of feeling good. And that took me a lot of practice to get rid of that as well. You
what
know,
okay, I'm
like,
very curious because I noticed one, I think it's very common in a lot of cultures and a lot of families. It's usually something passed down. What helped you move past that? Like how did you get from because that's something that's so ingrained in you, right? So how do
mhm,
you move? I guess that's what you do with your clients, but
yeah,
how did you what really helped you to go from almost dreading feeling happy because of what would come after to just being able to be with the happiness?
just practicing.
Practicing.
practicing and practicing and practicing. In that moment when I had this thought in my mind that came to my thought, like, oh, something bad might happen, I was like, that's wrong. And I just said, told myself in my head, that is wrong. That's a false belief. That is not true. And I just repeated it and kept on going with whatever I was doing or feeling that good feeling. But I
Mm-hmm.
had to like pass it by saying, that is misbelief. That is not true. That is misbelief. That is not true. And a lot of times, why we connect that feeling of happiness with something bad that happens as well, because sometimes we do feel good, and then something later, something bad does happen. Those things are actually not connected, but we connect them because they happen in a really close timeline, and we connect them while actually they just completely separate from each other.
Mm-hmm.
The bad thing didn't happen because you were feeling good before, it just happened. It's not connected to the good thing that happened or you feeling good. It was just a close timeline when they happened, but you just have to tell yourself, you have to train and practice until it becomes your natural understanding that those are not connected. And then after you practice that, then it just goes away. Kind of weird thing to say. It just goes away after a while. It was just like, and occasionally if it does come up, I just like say same thing. It's a false belief. It's not true.
I love that you say it's practice, because I think that's something that I took for granted. I always wanted like an overnight fix. Like, what's the one thing I can do and it'll change it automatically and I never have to worry about it again. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't come to this. I'm 36 years old. It didn't happen overnight. So it's not going to rewire in my brain overnight. I
No.
mean, there are definitely things that you can do to speed it up, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you still have to choose what there's that again a saying like, what dog do you feed? The good
Yeah.
dog or the bad dog? And it's like, even if you've rewired yourself, you still have to choose to feed the good one.
Mm-hmm.
Active choice over and over.
Over and over until it becomes natural, and then you don't have to do it as much. Then it's just like maybe once in a while you feel that, but most of the time you're just able to know that it's not true, and
Mm,
you're able to, like you were saying, just sit with the feeling, the positive feeling, and that feels much better. You
yes.
get comfortable, and this is how you get comfortable with the positive feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but you said you're gonna show us some kind of breath work exercise as well.
Yes.
But before we get to that, I wanna like ask you, because you were saying that before you found it,
Mm-hmm.
you had your own anxiety feelings. So how did your anxiety felt like?
I never called it anxiety. I didn't know to call it anxiety. But it was for me. I really felt more overwhelmed, and definitely feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. Um,
Okay.
and I for me it came out a lot in work, because that's always been something. Like when I had a job a few years ago that there were a lot of moments where I felt very unqualified, and
Okay.
I would I would get so worked up and so anxious I couldn't even do what I was supposed to do, because I was so worried I was going to do it wrong. And it was like this spiral, this horrible spiral. And you know unfortunately, if I couldn't go for a walk, if I couldn't move my body, that's always something that's really helped me. Then I would just be stuck, and I'd be in meeting after meeting with the feelings of overwhelm and anxiety building and building and building. So it just felt like, how if you shake a can of soda,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
if you open it, it's going to explode. So internally, it felt like that can was me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just all this pressure building and building and building, and I don't know what to do with it. And I mean, it would just come. I would snap at people, just all sorts of things it would manifest in.
Mm-hmm. So that was in your body, but then also in your mind, you had some thoughts there were.
Oh, they're awful thoughts. They're never helpful thoughts. It's, I can't do this. I'm not qualified. Why would somebody do this? Is this even worth it? I'm not good enough. Like, there's not a single positive thought. was swirling around. I can tell you that. It was all negative thoughts, all very self-deprecating, all very insecure. And again, sometimes a little like doomsday. I should just give up. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't even be here. Like very, very unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
negative thoughts.
And did those thoughts took over like everything else? Were you able to acknowledge them? Did you acknowledge those thoughts, or they were just automatic and you were not able to talk with them?
At that time, they were automatic. I didn't know how to. Really, the only thing for me that I didn't know I really had control over my thoughts. I
Mm-hmm.
thought whatever came up was truth. I didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
discernment on just because you think something doesn't make it true. So
Yeah.
even though, so for me, it felt very true. And so the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that I could do would be completely to like I said, move my body. And then I could get to a more positive place. More
Mm-hmm.
positive thoughts were coming, but I wasn't really directing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like it was very reactive. At that time, it was very reactive. I really didn't feel like I had any control over it. Now I know tools I can use where I can control my body. I can control my thoughts and I can sit there and at first I hated when people would say this because that doesn't even make sense. When people like imagine your thoughts, scrolling in front of you so that they're not in you, but they're in front of you. And I'm like, I don't because if you're really in it, if you're really deep into it, it's so hard to
Mm-hmm.
think of that. But I use different tools to transition to a place where maybe I'm not happy, but I'm in a more receptive place. And then I can look at my thoughts and then I can observe them and be the gentle observer and do all of that. But for me, there has to be kind of, like I said, a transition. I can't jump right into that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
on how deep it goes. And really, it's how deep the limiting belief is that's
Mm-hmm.
driving that feeling or those thoughts.
Because most of us, we grow up with that limited feeling, so that limiting feeling at least being around, uh, I would say 20 years. Like
Mhm.
after we turn 20, then we start uh, learning more about things because they not now we're teaching more to the kids about feelings and emotions, but when we were growing up it was not taught. There was not even like we didn't know what the feelings were. We didn't know how to control them, how to manage, or none of that. Like you were saying, like you're saying, you're reactive, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So and so that's belief has been with you with 20 years, like, and you were saying trying to like make it go away with one day.
It doesn't work like
It
that.
takes another 20 years to get rid of it.
And it's hard because when you're in a really good space, it's so clear. You're like, oh, well, I know this isn't true. Why did my mind even go that way? And in those moments, you're like, oh, I would never think like that again. And then something happens. It could be something small, and then you're back into the spiral, and it's like, how did I get back here? And what I've
Hmm.
learned is it does not do any good to shame or guilt yourself about where you
Yes.
are right now. Don't be
Hmm.
mad at your because that just makes it worse. You're just digging the hole deeper. Instead, again, come back, find a way, use different tools to help you transition to at least a neutral place.
Hmm.
From the neutral place, then you get to decide: do you go back down that spiral or do you choose another direction?
Hmm. I always say try to find like new positive outcome. See, like
Mhm.
whatever situation is, what would be the positive outcome or action to do?
Yes.
It's like whatever it is, maybe it's just like sitting with the emotion or go get a glass of water,
Hmm.
calm down before you're gonna respond.
Yeah.
Text messages, don't respond right away, give yourself time. Because all those things, like you were saying, with your notifications on your phone, that means they feel urgent, but
Yes.
they're really not.
No.
Like sometimes when I see something that's feels really urgent and text messages or emails, I give myself, even if I can, as long as time as I can to respond.
Hmm.
It could be like an hour, it could be 20 minutes, it can be 5 minutes, it can be a day, next day. Because then I will have more calm and more reasonable response.
Yes. Yes. One of the I on it, and I did it years ago, not even realizing why I was doing it, but I've ever since probably since I started working, I have my notifications muted. Now,
Mm.
I'll still see them blink, And sometimes
Mhm.
I have to put my phone on do not disturb simply so I'm not seeing them come in, because it does, my immediate response is, oh, I need to respond. And I've had friends even who will, if they can't get a hold of me, they'll text me, they'll call me, and I had to tell them, like, you can't do that, because then I'm
Mhm.
thinking there's an emergency, and you just wanting to chat is not an emergency. So
Mhm.
you have one way of getting a hold of me. If I don't answer, you leave a voicemail, or you send a message and just say everything is okay, but I want to talk to you. But let me know, so I'm not sitting there, in a meeting and you're blowing my phone up and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the worst has happened. Like, don't
Yeah.
do that to me, please. Don't
Mhm.
give me something else to send my mind into a tizzy. Like, but it's one, setting boundaries, but two, knowing yourself. And that's why I do the do not disturb. If I'm in a meeting, like for this, my phone's on do not disturb. I don't
Mhm.
want it blinking. I don't want it buzzing. I don't want the distraction. And here's the thing: before we had cell phones, we only had landlines. Well, you would go an entire day without
Yes.
knowing whether or not someone called you, and somehow we
Exactly.
survived.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly. We had to learn that again.
yeah.
So that's a good part. Because you can't let those things control you. You have to be in control of all those technologies. That's why I'm not afraid of technology that comes, because but for a lot of people, they have to understand they have to be in control of their technology. Technology can't be in control of you. Then you're fine.
Absolutely. Use it
Yeah.
as a tool. That's all it is.
Hmm. Okay, Rosanna, let's. I'm excited about doing the breathing exercise as well. So, what? How do you know which breathing exercise to do? First of all, for
Good
people
question.
who's starting, people who don't know about breathing exercise, what it even is. Let's get a little bit explanation to start with.
So essentially, breathing exercises are exercises where you are intentionally altering your breath in certain ways to impact your body. Now, your body, and I don't want to get too deep into the science of it, but essentially, your breathing completely regulates your autonomic nervous system. So that's the system that decides whether we're in fight or flight or rest and digest. So there are different breathing exercises you can do to upregulate yourself, like if you need more energy, if you need to feel more alert. And there are
Hmm.
certain exercises you can do to down regulate yourself.
Hmm.
There are also exercises you can do to balance. Now,
Hmm.
because again, history wise, I tended to operate in a sense of hypervigilance. I personally tend to prefer down regulating over the balance ones. Once I down regulate, I can do a balance exercise. But if I go from to balance, it's not going to work. I have to go from to down regulating. So it's
Okay.
your breath, just like your phone, your breath is a tool. And at any given point, and it is wonderful because it is a free tool that is always available to you, and you get to decide how you use it.
Hmm.
Now, somebody who's in the throes of like an anxiety attack or just feeling anxious, you're going to want to use a down regulating breathing technique. And the one that I'm going to go with is actually one I shared on a podcast a while ago. It's really, really great. It's really strong. It's also not new. It's something Navy SEALs have used for years. Like if they're in
Oh.
high stress conditions, they use this to make sure that they stay calm and not activated by what's happening outside of them. And I don't know if you know about Navy SEALs, but they have pretty stressful jobs.
Hmm.
And I actually had somebody, when I explained this breathing technique, their daughter called them, was about to go into a Taylor Swift concert, and was basically having a full-blown panic attack, an anxiety attack, because it was just, there's so many people, there's so much going on. Nothing against Taylor. I'm sure it was a lovely experience. But she walked her daughter through this breathing exercise, and she was actually able to calm herself down enough to be able to go in. So
Okay.
it takes, and the beauty of it, all of them, if you do them for 90 seconds to 3 minutes, you will feel a complete shift in your body.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
how do we start? What do we
Okay.
have to do to start with?
So let's do box breathing. That's the one I was just talking about, the breathing technique that Navy SEALs use and that this woman walked her daughter through. And it is very, very simple. And the reason it's called box breathing is because essentially we're doing four different alterations of our breath. So what you first do is you're going to breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. So you're going to go, and then you hold your breath for 4 counts. And then you exhale for 4 counts through your nose and hold your breath for 4 counts. So if you're thinking of the image while you're doing that, it's creating a box. So I'll now, without speaking, I'll just do the breathing and you follow along, and I'll be counting on my fingers, okay?
Okay. How many times you gonna do it?
Let's do just 2 rounds of it,
2 rounds.
okay? Or two
Mm-hmm.
boxes, if you want to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so ready?
Mm-hmm.
So that was 2 boxes. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind, and this is anytime you want to downregulate, when you breathe in, when you inhale, you always want to breathe so deeply that your stomach expands. Because a lot of people, and I'm sorry I didn't say this beforehand, but a lot of people don't realize it, but they spend a lot of their time, especially if they're in hypervigilance, breathing shallowly into their chest. Simply breathing into your stomach is enough to downregulate you.
Hmm.
But then when you add in those breath holds in between the inhale and the exhale, then you're further balancing your body and coming out of that anxious state.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, now if you really want to feel like, and I'm sure you notice it in your body, but if you really want to feel a significant difference, minimum 90 seconds, ideally like 90 seconds to 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So 3 minutes takes a lot. I'm thinking in my mind, 3 minutes takes a lot of time to like pay attention that you're controlling it. So do you put like a time or like?
I would recommend doing a timer because, and here you're going to feel much calmer, probably 90 seconds in, but keep doing it. Keep doing, because a lot of people are like, oh, I feel better. Just keep doing it. Allow yourself to feel better and better. Don't just stop at better, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
allow for better and better. But you will notice your body starts to soften, your shoulders drop, your posture relaxes. But again, making sure that you're breathing into your belly when you're inhaling, and then you hold it, and then you exhale through your nose, and then hold it. And it's amazing. And again, 3 minutes, believe me, you do a lot of other things for 3 minutes in your life.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, like you said, you start with 90 seconds, and like this, and 90 second is already a minute and a half.
You're halfway there.
Yeah. So
Halfway
I
there.
have to do another half. So how many counts that will probably take? What do you think?
That's probably about 5 to 7 rounds to get to 90 seconds,
Okay. That's
right?
now when you break it down this way, now it's not doesn't seem any
No,
long at all. That's pretty much like doing it maybe 10, 15 times, depends how fast people count and everything. So
that part too.
like,
Mhm.
yeah. You see now this way I thought it through in a different way for myself. Like it's 3 minutes seemed long, but now I'm thinking like only to do I had to do 10 boxes, 10, 15 boxes of it. Now it doesn't seem long.
See, and for me, it's the opposite. 3 minutes, I'm like, okay. But if you say 10 to 15, I'm like, oh, that's so many. But it's funny.
Oh,
Whatever way works for you, right?
mm-hmm,
However it works in your mind. And I'm so glad you said that because it's true. We all think differently. We all
mm-hmm,
interpret things or view it differently. So whether it's 90 seconds feels doable versus 5 rounds or 10 rounds, then just breathe.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
however
that's the
makes
thing.
you feel
Like
better, just breathe.
that's what I'm telling people about happiness as well. You have to like you can't go by what happiness is for somebody else. Exactly like you were saying right now about the breathing. For you, the 3 minutes seemed different. For me, that count sounded shorter. So I had one episode where one person liked showers and one liked baths. So one felt happy when she was taking showers, one felt good when she was taking baths. So if I would tell the person who's taking a shower to do bathtub to feel happy, that person's not going to feel happy in a bathtub because that's not where her happiness is. But now, when I tell the person that she tells me that she likes taking showers, I say, well, when you feel like you want to feel happy, go take a shower. She will go and take
Mm,
a shower because that is her happiness point.
yeah.
And she will feel it. Instead of me telling her, oh, well, I heard that bathtubs make you happy, go take a bathtub. She will go in a bathtub, have a miserable time, come out and like, I didn't feel happy, you
Right.
know? So,
That's
so
such a good
it,
point. That's so true.
hmm that's why you have to know more. The more you know about yourself, the more you can make good decisions.
Well, and the more you learn about different options and tools available to you, like don't stop just because the first one you heard didn't resonate with you, you know?
Mhm.
That's why when people say, and this is, well, for me, it helps me feel happy. But like when people say they hate working out, to me, all I hear is I haven't found something I love to do.
Mhm.
There's so many different ways to work. And because I've, for many, many years, very, very religious about working out like 5 days a week. But the thing was, I found things I love to do. So for me, I didn't have to like force myself to do it. I felt so good doing it that it was like, why would I not do this? But there were a lot
Mhm.
of types of working out I did not like to do, would never do. Like I hated any class like for abs. I hate
Mhm.
ab workouts. It hurts my back. I'm not going to do it. 20
Mhm.
minutes of an ab workout to me feels like an hour of just torture. So I don't do
Mhm.
it. I'm not going to force myself. I don't need abs
Yep.
anywhere here. But you tell me go for a walk, I'll do it for 90 minutes and feel like it went by in 20 minutes. And guess what?
Mhm.
Just as good for my body, just as good for my health, just as good for my mental health and my happiness levels.
Exactly. That's cool.
Mhm.
Oh, well, let's tell people about your what you're doing for other things as well, and how they can connect with you.
Okay. Well, so I am on Instagram and Facebook a lot. That's where I, create content. I do guided breathwork sessions, private and some group ones. I actually have a group breathwork and hypnosis session coming up on breaking bad habits. So the easiest way is to follow me on Facebook or Instagram. So then you'll know when I'm opening up my coaching and breath work. And if you have any questions about my coaching and breath work, you can just go to the link in my bio and schedule a session. Happy to talk with you, learn about it. And I also do trainings, like miniature breathwork trainings on different breathing techniques for businesses and groups, just so people have tools that they can use anytime, anywhere.
Hmm. And all those links are in the descriptions as well. So if you anybody of the viewers they you want to look up the links there in descriptions, so you can get in contact with Rosanna. So that's the thing. But so you were saying that breath work, it's not just for anxiety. You can use it. You say breaking habits.
Yes, breaking. Well, so I'm doing what I'm actually doing. It's a breath work and hypnosis session. So what I
Okay.
have found is a lot of times when people have bad habits, it's tied to a subconscious belief. So let's use the example of emotional eating. A lot of
Okay.
times, like if somebody tends to emotionally eat, it's not really about the food, even though they might think that. It's about the emotion that they're trying to feel through eating or avoid through eating.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people just aren't in tune with what it is that's driving that. So actually, I'll use this example. I had a gentleman who reached out to me about nail biting. And so what I did is I had him keep a log for a week of what's happening when you start nail biting. He's like, oh, I do it all the time. I'm like, I know, but start being aware of it. And
Mm-hmm.
when he was like, oh, it's when I'm not sure how to do something or when something big is coming up. So essentially it's a self-soothing technique. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you understand that, then it's a lot easier to plant better suggestions. Like we did a hypnosis on like, okay, if you don't have to bite your nails to soothe, you can do deep belly breathing, you can play with putty. But it was identifying what is the subconscious reason that you're doing this. When people just focus on changing the behavior, like I did for years with dieting, or I just have to eat better. No, you need to understand why you're eating when you're not hungry, or you need to understand why you're eating when you feel an abundance of emotion. Then you can break that habit. So it's not just behavior change, it's really about belief change. And what I love about using breath work is a lot of times people are so in their heads. Breath work
Mm-hmm.
allows you to get past the mental chatter, so you kind of get to that quiet place where you can really listen to your gut wisdom. We all have it. It's just sometimes we just overthink it, and we're thinking of so many other things, or we have so many voices around us. But breath work, especially the guided breath work sessions, help people kind of get past all the chatter and the chaos and get back to what is my gut really telling me? Where is this
Mhm.
really coming from? What is this really about?
Mhm. That's what it comes down to, not letting that saying, oh, actually, now that I never thought about it this way. Same way where I was saying, like, not letting the technology control it, not letting that feeling to control as much as you being able to actually realize that you can control that feeling. So
Absolutely.
same way we don't let the technology to control it. We can't just let the automatic responses to control it if we're gonna learn to control ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
like probably I'm realizing a lot of things when I'm talking with people and guests like this. I realize a lot of things because now when you're bringing this breath work in, that actually you taking the control of your body. Your
Yes.
body is not in control. You're in control of your body.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Nailed
So
it.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
That it's just like we're such an amazing species. I
Aren't
always like wonder it out. Like it's interesting how we work.
I know. I know.
Hmm.
And it's amazing the things that we can convince ourselves of in our own minds.
Hmm. Exactly, and that's why it's now a lot of people start talking as well instead of just listening to what were our mind talking, actually talking with ourselves instead of just listening ourselves.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
such
I
a
just saw
very
that.
important distinction.
Yeah, I just saw that post. I think like this week somewhere they were saying that like, and it makes so much sense. I think that's when it started really changing for me as well. When I started more talking with myself instead of just listening, and when I first learned that, like yours, everybody's saying now, don't believe everything that you think about.
Yes.
When I first learned that sentence, that's changed a lot in my mind as well.
Oh, absolutely. Same. It's like, wait, you mean just because I think it doesn't mean that it's not the absolute fact? And it's like, no, you think
Hmm.
a lot of random things every day. And if all of them were fact, we'd be in deep trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so with all my guests, like in my other podcast, this is a first episode of the anxiety, but all the other ones, I like to ask everybody personally, what is your personal understanding of what is happiness? Not what other people think what is happiness, but what do you think that happiness is for you?
Happiness is, it
For
is,
you.
yes, no, I'm thinking of how to describe it because for me, it's something I feel. And
Okay.
it's this light feeling. And it almost feels like there's light coming from me, like pure joy coming from me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from inside. Yes, things outside might cause me to think that's what makes me feel happy, but it's really something from inside. And it's when almost I feel like there's just pure joy and light coming from me. That's happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I can apply that to a million things.
Mm-hmm. Great. And what would be just maybe like three or whatever amount of things or actions that make you feel happy?
Gratitude. I feel happy when I can feel grateful for things. I recently adopted a dog and I
Mhm.
love her. And I just look at her sometimes, even when she is naughty. And just the love that I can see she feels for me makes me feel so grateful and it makes me feel happy. Like, oh, and knowing that I have, I'm creating a safe and happy home for her compared to what she had before. That is so big.
Mhm. Anything, yeah. Something simple, very simple thing that makes you feel happy in a moment.
So I really love when I get to see flowers. Like if I'm on a walk and I see
Oh.
beautiful flowers, it just makes me happy.
Mhm.
I love it. I'll take pictures. I never go back and look at the pictures, but in that moment, I'm like, oh, I need a picture of this because it's so beautiful. I love,
Yeah.
And that's why I always have flowers behind me. I love to
Hmm.
have flowers. They just are beautiful. It makes me happy.
Yeah,
And I would say one
that's
more
great.
thing.
Hmm.
There's this is, I think this is more of something from like my family. Uh, but I love to sip hot coffee.
Okay.
When I was growing up, that was something like that was our family time. We if it was rainy, if we didn't know what else to do, my dad would say, "Okay, I'm going to put on a cup of coffee or put on a pot of coffee," and we would all sit and have coffee. So to me, just having a cup of coffee reminds me of those times where we just sat together as a family and had coffee.
Hmm. And the point is that to have those things that if you know what those moments and things are, then you can just fully sit with those moments and thoughts. Oh, and maybe add that breathing exercise for that moment too.
Yes,
It'll be perfect.
yes.
Yeah. So, for all the viewers, I'm going to talk with the viewers for a second as well. And altogether, there's going to be 9 episodes. There is 9 episodes, probably when you're watching it, might be re-recorded. And watch all 9 episodes about honesty, about anxiety. We'll talk about how different people experience anxiety, what the experience are, what tools they use, and they're really good episodes. So looking forward for that as well. And Rosanna, thank you so much for joining us for our first episode.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
This is so lovely. I love being able to chat with you. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. And I believe all the viewers gonna take such a. For me, I kind of still feel the calmness of those 2 rounds of that breathing. So
Good.
I'm wondering if the viewers that feel the same, if you felt or if you had any experience with the breathing exercise, make a comment below. Uh, I do feel like, I don't know, kind of like positive feeling out of it.
Good. I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so. Well, I
Yeah.
feel a positive feeling after this. I love a great conversation. So thank you. This made my day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All the viewers, take a little pause and do the exercise 90 seconds, 3 minutes, or 10 rounds, 15 rounds, or boxes. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching and enjoy your day. Bye.